How's it? And welcome to the Just Now podcast. My name is Anton Taylor, and we are coming to you from Pride Fighting Academy in Cape Town, South Africa.
We're a podcast about grit, grace, and getting punched in the face. But today we're talking about yoga and I guess our personal yoga stories to a degree, and what I'm sure will be a couple of wild and wacky stories of yoga along the way. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge one of our sponsors, Revive. So Revive is a hydration formulation that is the perfect balance between magnesium, sodium, and potassium that delivers optimal hydration to your body. Just 750 mils of water mixed with one Revive is all that you need for optimal hydration. For more information, visit getrevive.co.za. Iron Curtain Security is a software and hardware company that specializes in the supply, installation, and design of CCTV and early warning detection security. For more information, visit ironcurtainsecurity.co.za. Ligam Fight Gear supplies fighters, coaches, and gym owners with premium quality, competition-grade traditional fight gear with a modern edge. All Ligam Fight products are designed, tested, and engineered by professional MMA fighters. For more information, visit ligamfightgear.com and use the promo code JustNow10 for a 10% discount when purchasing.
Right, yoga and the yoga umbrella. Okay, now this is I'm really interested for this. I'm being keen for this because I think yoga is many different things for many different people. Yeah. And somebody can say, people get very religious about it. Like, this is yoga or this isn't yoga. What is yoga to you?
Like you're saying, I think it's so many things.
Yeah.
And when I first got into yoga, it was very much about the asanas, the movements, the actual poses. And dare I say, even about the strength training that can come from it, or the stretching that comes from it. And I think if yoga is just exercise for you, then great.
Yeah.
But it is for so many people so much more than that. So it's a spiritual journey, it's a meditation, it's a breath work. For me, it's all those things too. I do think everything, when I first get into it with my addictive personality, I can be, I joke and I call it a happy clappy yogi, right? So your happy clappy Christians or whatever, when you preaching the gospel to people. I think when I first got into yoga, I was very namaste and everything is transcending and everything that could be, I could incorporate that was yoga. I was doing that. I think I've chilled out a little bit and I have a more real world idea of what yoga is now. But I think if that is yoga for you, and if it is this transcending spiritual wushu journey for you, great. Amazing. I'm glad you found something. But I think it was that for me in the beginning when I first found it, because I needed, I think yoga is whatever you need it to be.
Yes.
And when I got into it, I needed it to be a lot of things.
Yeah.
It needed to be this healing thing. It needed to be a physical practice, a meditative practice, a breath work. I was reading all the different books on yoga, and it was about the diet and everything. And then somewhere along the line, your body and its needs changes, and then what you take from yoga changes.
Well, I think that's also how you keep it sustainable, because I think anything you get involved with, when I started at the boxing gym, where you talk about it, it's everything, and then to be able to continue for a while, you sort of, let it take its sort of rightful place in the order of things within one's life, And I think why I'm so passionate about yoga is that I think it is a practice that can really give so much to, or I've got so much from it. At the same time, for me, I've found it's within certain realms. I don't think that yoga has given me supernatural powers or supernatural healing or something like that. I haven't found that it can cure serious conditions, but that's okay, because what it does offer is still really amazing and dare I almost say life-changing. For you, how did you come into yoga? And we've spoken about it in the podcast where we spoke to you, but it seems like you've always been described as you've always been a fighter. And so coming into yoga, was that, I don't want to say was that the first time you'd had a softer, but that, because say for me, I think what I found it was the first place where I didn't have to be so competitive and didn't have to strive so much.
Actually, quite the opposite. So I think yoga's always been around for me, coming from a place of feeling quite weak and feeling like I lacked athleticism in the beginning. But I came from a little bit of that dancing background. Yoga was the one place that I felt, because I didn't need to compete, it was the one place that I felt like I could do something. So like I can hang out in down dog, you know, I can get a little bit of biceps from like doing chaturangas.
Yes.
But because I had natural dancing flexibility, it was like I could also I can kind of go into the splits. So I can kind of win a little bit at yoga. So that's kind of how the initial yoga journey started. But then as I really got more into it, it definitely became, so the yoga came first and the fighting came afterwards, put it that way.
Okay.
So initially yoga was very much a outlet of physical exercise even. And as I've grown into the fighting space that I've been in, yoga's definitely been me being able to tap into my feminine energy and a more healing energy, and being able to bring that to other people in this space who wouldn't ordinarily go out and find it. So I've never been intimidated by a yoga studio, even though I probably can't do certain poses as well as the teacher can. I've always been okay to kind of hang out in those spaces because I guess they're naturally feminine spaces. So like I would look like anybody else in that space, but I'm very aware that a lot of people who are in my gym space would not be caught dead in a yoga studio because it would just be, you know, too much for them to deal with.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of preconceptions, misconceptions, like just general conceptions that people have about yoga teachers, studios. And I think I think we were excited to even do this podcast is like, I think that between the two of us are examples of perhaps non-traditional, whatever like someone in their mind thinks of a Western yoga teacher, it's different, you know. And I think for myself, I always had an idea in my mind of like yoga and like it's all like the teachers are like, you know, dudes in white linen and it's all very Heisha wow, you know. And I think I went to like some, you know, you're kind of fucking around, and I went to like some studio which I found a bit competitive, and everyone was kind of like topless, and it was all kind of like, and like I felt shit, you know. And I think what I've really loved about yoga is like I'm incredibly like, I'm not that flexible, you know, and I've had a lot of injuries. You'll sometimes probably have men in your class or just general students, because it's like a gym where people use their bodies, where like you're incredibly tight and like locked in. And so I was like, I think from the beginning I had to accept I'm not going to be able to do these poses. But initially it kept me from it because I had a certain idea. And certainly as I've got into yoga and practiced it and spent more time, like that image in my head, there'll always be a few, no matter what you do in life, there'll be a few weird people that like take your attention and you can feel that they dominate the space. But I think it's more a case of like they just are, they get your attention. The majority of yoga people that I've met are like pretty actually down to earth people, just trying to like teach a practice that is very helpful, you know. And so for me, it was like tentative getting into it. And I then, it was a very different space for me, you know. And I think for me, I'm very hard on myself and I'm very competitive, and to just be in a place where you don't have to struggle, you know, and you don't like, and I think because I don't think you can really be bad at yoga or even good. And I do think that sometimes people need to fucking remember that. Like it's intuitively, intrinsically, it's non-competitive. But for me, I was like, I'm so inflexible and unsupple that I'm just gonna suck. And you know, I'd luckily had teachers who were very like, you know, comfortable, or made me feel very comfortable. And I think it was almost like, I guess the idea of like when it's a safe space, because like, and I think for me to just not have to beat myself up and to be able to be like, okay, you're gonna, you know, try touch towards your toes, whatever it was really, man, it was really good,
So you started doing yoga, practicing yoga around the time that you were getting back from injuries.
Yes,
and then when did the spark kind of arrive to actually go study a teacher training?
So I had a period where I was in Mpumalanga and I was trying to finish my master's, and I went to yoga every day, and I had a really nice teacher. And like, for me, literally those yoga classes, when I say like, not like everything was like, oh, like agony. And I was like, you'll often see South African men in particular who play, contact sports, who like, we gym so that our shoulders get like that. Just how and I was really like that. And then like started teaching, and then, I came to a studio, the Charla, and I had a really nice teacher, Naomi, who would be like, really encouraging. And I started to be like, okay, this is pretty cool. And I think, she was like, would you, I think you should consider teaching. And I think for me it was cool because there weren't many teachers, it sounds like, I don't want to say many teachers that looked like me, but there weren't many dudes who digged sport, who, partied in their life. It's mainly a lot of like, female space.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, geez, and I think I was very lucky, and I had really nice yoga teachers teaching me, and I was like, shit, I would love to like pass this on, and I think for me over the years, and before I started doing yoga, I was practicing mindfulness, which is sort of like, like meditation. And I really found that was very helpful for me in interrupting rumination and looping thoughts and stuff like that. So that sort of, like I say, that umbrella of things has really been helpful for me. And I think I got into yoga because of the physical benefits, which I still stand by, and I think you can talk about it. But I think for athletes, and as you get older, that mobility that you get and that balance exercises are amazing. But I think what really kept me there was the sense of stillness that my mind would go through. I have a very busy mind, and I'll arrive in a yoga class, my mind will be like, ugh, and by the end, I'll be like, oh my word, I feel like, it still. And I think it really was just a desire to be able to like give that to other people. It sounds a bit like, and that's why for me, my yoga, the teaching that I do now is not gonna, I'm not teaching enough that it's gonna pay my bills, and I do it just purely because, I love it, man. Yeah.
I think it's amazing, and I think it's amazing that you own the fact that you don't necessarily look like a standard yoga teacher, whether that's because you're a guy or more of a masculine energied man than like most of the male yoga teachers that you're going to find, especially in Cape Town. I think for me it was almost the opposite, where I really struggled to kind of figure out what place do I have as a yoga teacher, because I'm a female, and I don't think when I started yoga, I didn't have as much muscle as I have now, but I was still very muscle bound for the average yoga teacher, and so limited in terms of what the expectation was of what I could maybe do with my body, and I struggled to kind of figure out what would my place be as a yoga teacher, based on that, and I really wanted to be like the studio yoga teacher that goes and teaches in like whatever Fresnay or Sea Point, and teaches women to put their foot behind their head or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think for me, just settling into the fact that there is a type of yoga teacher for everyone, and that there's value that you can add to your community was very profound for me, to be able to just come into a space that is very masculine energy like this gym, and be able to just help people find some more space in their bodies, even if it is just like, it's not for me here in the gym. It's definitely not a spiritual practice. It's not a practice that's focused very much on, sure, there are levels of mindfulness, but we're not spending lots of time in Shavasana.
Yeah.
We're not, spending lots of time meditating. I feel like it's just a little bit too much to ask for in this space, but there is just a finding some space in your body, which I think for a lot of guys in the space is hard.
But I think that's a beautiful thing, and that's what I often think about. People don't have to oversell yoga. And I think sometimes the temptation is say, you can do this, and to find space within your body is actually a wonderful thing, and I think in a gym where people use their body, and as we get older, we want to maintain, our bodies, the use of it. So to do something that gives you like, and I think for me, like I was like, I had said in an earlier podcast, like I had a lot of injuries and bad luck and stuff. So my knee, there was a lot of trauma, and I used to walk with a limp. And now, like, I don't have a limp, you know, and I can compete in boxing, which is a fucking miracle, you know. And I don't need to say, oh, okay, this practice will, you know, get cures. But it's like, you know, just to have a little bit more space. And I think, I mean, it's so interesting how I still can't tell you what exactly is happening in a yoga class, why afterwards I feel so good.
Yeah.
But physically, from a physical side, like my body, when I'm able to practice a lot, is like, feels so much better. And maybe you found this, I think, what's cool about getting older, and I used to, you know, be much less healthy in a different space, like, and with maintaining the yoga, like I just feel better in myself, and like physically, like I feel better than I did 10 years ago, you know, which I thought was meant to almost go the opposite way, you know.
And sometimes you don't need an answer for like why. It's just like when I practice yoga, like I feel my body feels better, and I feel calm, and my mind is more at ease. Whether I'm actually physically getting to a yoga studio and having someone lead me through a practice, or whether I'm doing a 5-10 minute practice, you know, at home, I feel better when I do it. I think for me, the big shift was in my posture, and I had started to become quite rounded in my posture from all of this, like, you know, hands up, being forward. And after my yoga teacher training, because I spent 30 days in a row, literally for 4 or 5 hours a day doing yoga, my posture changed completely. And I actually I had a fight booked, and it was the first time they asked me how tall I was. And I was like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I had stood on the thingy, and they figured out how tall I was, and then I was reminded by Mike that I was actually shorter the last time that somebody actually checked my height. Shit. And I'd grown like 2 centimeters, and that was just a matter of actually standing tall.
Yeah.
And those small like posture adjustments that I picked up during the teacher training. Now, I'm not saying anybody should, you know, submit themselves to 5 hours of yoga every day.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, it's not just an abstract thing that, oh, you're going to find space in your body. Like,
literally, it has proper applications.
You're physically finding space in your body, which is awesome.
And you can see people's body, like you say, posture, how it changes, and how we all, even if I think I still, and we've said, like doing boxing and fighting, you do lean forward. And even if there's just more of an awareness, you know, and I think, you know, one of the great things is, which I think yoga is such a good complement, say, to martial arts, is that I feel like more aware, like my body awareness is higher. So, you know, in, say, boxing, when you're punching, it comes from the toe or the foot, and you're sort of moving through your hips or whatever. And just being able to connect more with like where I'm feeling in my body. So even, I mean, sometimes I think, you know, like, because it's interesting, like, how should a yoga teacher be? So I'm like, oh, if I'm sitting like this, are people going to go, oh, he's a phony, he's not like a proper teacher? Or if you have a moment of where you get angry and pissed off, it's like, oh, that's not very yoga of you. But I think having that kind of like awareness is fantastic. And I think for me, and it can sound quite abstract, and often, because if someone says like, why should I do yoga? It's like, fuck, okay, I mean, like, and like I say, I think it offers so much, and you can just stay in your lane. But I always say it's helped me feel almost like safe in my body. Like, and I think, you know, I would say comfortable in my body, but I think that maybe conjures up ideas of body image, which we've spoken about. But for me, and I think it's, again, I can't say exactly what the process is and why it's happening. But by doing yoga, I just feel, and I think it's maybe paying attention to what's going on inside yourself, like, fuck, I find it very soothing. And I feel like kind of secure and safe within myself, which has been my big sort of project and where I always want to feel in life. Yeah.
That's really cool. I think I like what you're saying, because we don't often sit and pay attention to those things. So often at the beginning of a yoga practice, whoever's guiding you will be like, you know, do a body scan or a mental scan or whatever. And sometimes even when I'm saying that to my class, it can seem a little bit phony, because it's quite abstract. Like, what are you actually asking for?
Yeah.
But I guess it is for you to interpret in that moment yourself, whatever
Yeah.
that means for you. And so am I checking my to-do list in my head so that I can put it aside
Yeah.
for an hour? Or am I thinking about the argument that I just had with my partner, or how my clothes feel, whatever, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
I guess for each person a different thing is going to come up. And then once you've been able to have that come up, you can then put it aside and hopefully try to work towards emptying your mind
Yeah.
for that period of time, for that practice, and finding some space emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And I think the beautiful thing that I learned from yoga, from my teacher training, is that it is for you to interpret what you want for it to be. So if it needs to, if you're looking for it to be a more spiritual practice, if you're looking for it to be a more physical practice, if you're just wanting to be able to sit in a seat on the floor and not have your hip flexors scream at you, that's fine too.
Yeah.
A big thing for me was being in a teacher training with only females, skinny females that had no flexibility issues. The teachers were both ex-gymnasts, so like no issues with movement at all. And then having them speak about, like, we're starting in a comfortable child's pose, or we're starting in a comfortable seat, and then coming into this gym space and teaching yoga where I can see guys, like, they knees are literally at their ears when they're trying to sit, and like, that does not look comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that anyone ever told me that was a comfortable place to start, because clearly that in itself for you is a lot.
Yeah.
So I've been able to walk into this space with a lot more empathy since doing my teacher training.
Yeah.
I think when you're only teaching in that traditional yoga studio
Yeah.
space with people that practice regularly, you forget how difficult small things can maybe be, like child's pose in a seat.
And I always think it's like, I really think, and that's why I said yoga initially was such a safe haven, because I feel like it's the closest I've come to removing a sense of failure, or good or bad, and as much as it would be cool to go through life like, oh, I'm not worried about the results of things, like we all do, but within yoga, I always say it's fucking arbitrary how far you can touch towards your toes, or how, like, we do it. It has no application or value. And what I often say is, like, if you if you're inflexible, maybe it's because you have fucking big muscles and you're strong and you've, or it's like, oh, you're sitting at your desk, and because maybe you have a job that pays, to support your family, so it's like we all have these things, and I always say there's no yoga Olympics. Like, someone said to me there actually was, I don't know, but like, it's not in my opinion, it's not competitive. So, and it's ultimately, you can only, like, you only know where you're doing with your yoga, because it's about how you feel within yourself. Like, am I fucking connecting to where I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, and no one else can judge that, and it's not like a synchronized dance thing. So it's not about how perfectly you're executing these poses. And that's why I love, like, teaching different body types. I love it when I'm like, get to teach here at the gym with people that use their bodies, because it's really like, what I'll say is the poses, when you see a picture of them in a textbook, that's an expression of the pose. It's not how it's meant to be. And so you and I will express the same pose in different ways, and I think it's cool, as you've said, to say, like, we can take different things from it. I know some people, they want their classes to be more physical and stronger, and they want to build strength. I think for me, because I train here a lot, I'm looking for, to stretch out and to relax. But it sort of really does, like you say, it's multifaceted, man. Yeah.
I think a big thing for me that stood out recently in terms of the benefit of yoga, stretching, if you want to just call it stretching, if yoga seems like it's too much of a term for you, was, I don't know if it was the first or the second one of David Goggins' book, because I know we've both done both of them, but he speaks about how locked up he was and how he couldn't move. One day he felt like his body was so jacked up, like he literally was in pain and couldn't move. And then ended up stretching for like 4 or 5 hours a day, something ridiculous. Now, he doesn't say yoga, he doesn't use the word yoga, but I mean, call it what you want to call it, you were stretching your body. And seeing somebody talk about how essentially disabled they became from years of, I think, ignoring cues of pain and injury and pushing through, which often in this fight space we often do, like, oh, I'm in pain, who cares, just train. And then seeing it catch up with somebody and them finding realizing that that's not the end. You're not disabled forever, as you found with your injuries as well, that you're able to come back from that. Something as simple as just spending some time stretching is huge, because it's such a simple thing, yet we all overlook it. And that yoga doesn't have to be a thing that I go and do at a class on a Sunday at 8 a.m., but I can actually just find 5 minutes at the end of my training to move and breathe a little bit and find some space in my body.
Yeah, and I think that Goggins, I think it's in his first book, but when you can also, as we say, like yoga can be for different people, and I said this a couple of times, like spiritual or bring them peace or whatever it is, but sometimes it's like as an athlete, it can help you achieve your goals. And as much as you learn, I say within yoga, I can feel like I'm not striving, I'm not having to do this. It also helps me with those things that I am striving towards, you know, and I think that's what I always say to like athletes, you know, don't sleep on yoga, you know, but also to anyone, because I think most people, as they get older, will sometimes experience back pain, aches and pains, and this is not to say that it can like cure everything, but I think even just in the process, so what I found with yoga is it'll show me places that I'm really stiff. So I'll be like, oh, I'm doing this, oh my God, my like quads are like insanely tight. And then I'll go home and like stretch them. So it gives you like that kind of, that awareness and almost like the torch that you can direct where you want to aim it, you know? Or sometimes, you know, you'll sit down at a yoga class and my mind will be like fucking super busy, you know? And I'll sort of go, okay, well, this is telling me that I'm, you know, my mind's quite busy today. And yeah, you know, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which has kind of been like a seminal work within psychology recently, and it's by a guy called Bessel van der Kolk. And he talks about, he has a sort of like, he was the main man in dealing with trauma, and he dealt with Vietnam War veterans, and he was, I think, whether it's with Harvard or one of these main universities and dealing with trauma. And over many years, trying to like find how do people recover from these things. And his books really talks about how, you know, by connecting with one's body, and it's not Heisha Wild, or it's backed up with lots of empirical knowledge and studies. And, you know, what he said about yoga, which I've always found, is that like yoga allows us to connect to what we're feeling in the moment. And by being aware of what we're feeling, we can be aware of what we need, you know. So we go, you know, any organism, to know how to respond appropriately, you really need to connect to how you're feeling. So often if it's like, oh, I'm feeling stressed, I need to eat, or I need to do some way to soothe me, or drink, or whatever. The more you can connect, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm being closer, and it's like, okay, this is how I can sort of sometimes just sit with it, you know. And he said a good thing is like, in yoga, you know, the sensations, they rise and then they drop. And it makes me think of the earlier podcast where we spoke about, you know, there's flows and seasons of life. But he, you know, what he said, which I found also very profound, is that we learn that everything in life is transient, good experiences and bad. And I think when we know that something will end, it makes us far more capable of tolerating it, you know, to tolerate stuff where we know it won't last forever. So I think in yoga, when you practice going into sometimes maybe sensations where there's quite a bit of intensity and not panicking, I really think, and then knowing that it passes, I really do believe that can translate to life, where we go through, we experience different things, and we can just know that it will pass, and we don't have to like freak out, and we can sort of ease into it. Yeah.
Have you ever cried in yoga practice?
It's a good question. Shit. I'll tell you, I don't have a memory of crying. I've actually sometimes like come into classes so busy and so stressed that in that initial period where you have to stay still, I felt like, and particularly when I started, like there was an overlap where I was drinking and then I was doing yoga. And coming into a class with a hangover, man, sometimes I felt like I'm gonna have a panic attack, and you know, you have to be still. And I'm like, oh. But I mean, I know, like, you know, people do cry. It seems to be quite quite
I don't
often.
know if it's like a chick thing, but like, fuck, I have cried. And then like, I have no idea why I'm crying. I'm just like lying there in child's pose, like fucking snot and trana. And like, I know that as I sit up, like there's just going to be like fucking shit all over my face.
Yeah.
And I've had people cry in my classes before. And then that's an interesting thing, because now you got to hold space for that. And like, you know, I don't know, do I hug you? Like, do you want what do I do right now? So obviously the theory is that certain poses like hip openers and heart openers are supposedly emotional releases or energy releases, and sometimes that can, you know, result in tears. But it's quite wild when it does happen, because it can catch you off guard, where you just like, I thought I was fine.
Yeah.
Clearly I'm not fine.
Well, it's crazy, man, because they say like hip openers can like, you know, sometimes release, and I was like, because I'm like, oh, we're going to say that different parts of the body store energy and shit. But I've had people who are beginners to yoga who have not read, they wouldn't have been suggested that, and they'll be like, I did the happy baby and I started crying, you know, and I'm like, I can't, you know, argue against it. And I wonder, on one level, maybe it's like being in a safe space where someone feels like it's okay to feel things. But I think it does, and I'm not going to try to put my finger on it. It's like maybe there are parts, like I was saying, like with these studies about how we manage emotions and hold things within our body. And maybe kind of it's like letting things go, man. Yeah.
It's crazy though.
It is crazy, yeah.
Speaking of crazy things,
Yeah.
so we've spoken very nicely about like how beautiful yoga is and how much benefit it's added to us. But we both know that there are that going through a teacher training specifically, or just being committed to a yoga practice for a long enough time in one culture, or one, you know. So I think Western yoga culture has got its. It can be a little toxic potentially. I'm curious if you've had any like wild and wacky experiences that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because before this we were like, you know, it never looks good being a hater and bitching and stuff. There are, but there's some fucking charlatans within the yoga space. There's some people who fucking talk a lot of shit and make lies and, you know, monetize off it. And I think, you know, one thing I would say is from everything that I've experienced in my life, there is no silver bullet, okay? And you have these people who say, like, I've seen people literally talking about fucking, you know, this can cure cancer and, but like, this, if you're having mental issues, do this. And I'm like, bro, and you know, if, like you've said, if someone comes to you with an injury, we're not physio. Yeah.
And it happens a lot.
Yeah, I'm not skilled enough to do it. And then you have people who are like, oh, let me, you know, if someone's got a mental illness, they need to go to a specialist and be treated.
The answer is not do more yoga always.
Exactly. And so I think what I struggle with as well is that often then it's people also bringing in this weird, vague thing of the universe. So it's like, oh, this is the universe telling you that you need to do this. Or like, it's like, bro, like, and then I start to think like, I don't believe that they're talking to whoever the universe is. So I'm like, you're just fucking making shit up, you know? And I think a lot of people get into yoga often because of the soothing that it provides. And I think that what can sometimes happen is that people can be a bit vulnerable and that there is a sort of position of authority that can occur within the studio. And so people can, you know,
like guru worship.
Like I haven't seen any weird shit with like guru stuff. Always tends to end up with sex, you know. Like I haven't seen anything like that, thank God. And so, but I have seen where people like hold way too much importance in the opinion of the, like, you know, instructor. And you know, man, you know, I was doing a course, and I don't like, you know, I don't want to talk shit about people, but for me, it started to be a bit inappropriate where what was happening is that it would be like you're given trauma, kind of like you're given like life coaching / psychological support from someone who hasn't, like, I really believe if you want to give someone like assistance medically or psychologically, you need to study in that fucking realm. And if you want to do alternative medicine, I think you should have studied for an equal amount of time, you know, because what I think the problem is you have people who do a 200-hour yoga teaching course and I think they're equipped to fucking, you know, deal with someone's, like, you know,
mental health.
Mental health. And so we were like having conversations where it was like, bring up your, because I think this is something also in yoga that people need to be careful of. Like, it can be good, it can be helpful for people who've had traumatic events, and it can be a safe space. But sometimes when people are trying to evoke your traumatic events and then try to give you healing and they're not qualified, like, that's fucking bullshit. And so what I had was, I had mentioned in private about my mom had passed away and some of the challenges. And then I was sort of, someone in the class was talking about something differently, and I was like, shit, you know, I just want to say, I know what it's like. And the instructor was like, you are looking for your dead mom in other women, and the woman that end up paying will be the woman that you end, like, so it was this hectic, let me humiliate this dude in the yoga class, like, confidential information. I didn't mention any of that stuff. And I think it was fucking gnarly, because it's like this person is claiming to have access to the fucking universe, where it's like, I'm the fucking ordained one, and I, like, are you fucking serious? Bringing up it's like, and they said, you know, you're like a little boy, lost little boy. So I got fucking hectic. You know, I was like, I waited, and I sort of put up my hand, and I was like, this is so inappropriate, you know, this is confidential. And, you know, I think everyone in the class was quite uncomfortable, but I just said, look, this is my end of the course. And yeah, man, it was like, it was fucked with me, because it's like a safe space. You know, it should be a safe space. You've got your guard down. I'd shared information about myself. And like, you know, I think that's the thing. If you're gonna, like, and this happens in the yoga space, and it does piss me off, where someone will share information and then they get almost like criticized for it, like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you know. And I'd also said, like, oh, I've been quite busy and stressful, and sometimes I'll, you know, have chocolate to wake up, and it was like, oh, you know, and it was like, you know, fuck, bro, we all gotta have a life, we all do things that are not good for ourselves, we can't all drink green juice all the time, people don't have the money, you know. So I felt like it was this kind of like authority to, I'm allowed to do this, and it's dangerous. And I'm glad that I was the person in this case, because I know that I'm strong enough, and I left the course, you know. But if that had happened to someone else, and I think it does happen, you know, where people can get really damaged, you know, and again, it's such a pity, because yoga gives enough. You don't have to now start saying that it's gonna sort out your fucking trauma if you do a down dog, you know.
I think it's also important, like you said, to know your place as a yoga teacher. Like, you're not a fucking guru. You're not some kind of healing shaman that, like you said, is speaking to like another universe. You're actually just a human being that's like teaching asanas and a little bit of like breath work. Like, it's fine. It's okay to just be that.
That's enough. It's enough.
In my teacher training, we had a girl disclose that she had an eating disorder, and that she'd been like starving herself the entire time, and that's why she wasn't able to like get through the day of, you know, 5 hours of yoga practice or whatever. And she decided to share this at a time that was like, no one asked for it. Like, it just kind of came up, which is cool. Like, I'm glad she found comfortable doing it. But the room was not qualified. There were 3 yoga teachers that were holding space, and they were not qualified to hold space for this. And this girl kind of left. It was just like bleh. And then, oh fuck, we don't know what to do. Oh, look at the time. Okay, bye guys. You know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't, space wasn't held properly. And I think the risk is that if you're going to open that can of worms, you need to be able to know what to do with it. I had an interesting experience going to a breath work. This is now a couple of months ago, so long after doing yoga teacher training, going to this meditative breath work workshop, where you like kind of lie down on your yoga mat, and you get put into a little bit of like a kind of a trance of some kind, and you're supposed to, I don't know, talk to your ancestors while you're there. It was cool. I had a very positive experience. I actually microdosed mushrooms, and it was cool. Like, I had a very good experience, and I spoke to my ancestors. It was great. It was the first time I've done something like that, but so you kind of hyperventilate yourself. The breath work that this teacher leads you through is essentially a hyperventilation. So you're like breathing in and out through your mouth quite rapidly, and that hyperventilation then creates like tingling all over your body. So like, there's the normal minded person in me, the sciencey person, that goes, cool, so we're just hyperventilating ourselves. But then the other part was like, cool, let's see where this goes. And I like to look at things as open-minded and, curiously as I can. So like I said, my experience was very positive. The music kind of was a great journey. I did a little bit of like convulsing, and according to the teacher, like worked through my trauma physically. But the lady next to me fucked out completely.
Yeah.
Like proper convulsions, like eyes rolling in the back of the head, like proper seizure vibes. And this teacher was not equipped to.
Yeah.
So I'm like lying there somewhere between awake and asleep, and I kind of can hear what's going on, but like I'm not, this sounds terrible, but in that moment, like I'm not holding space.
Yeah,
That's
no, of course,
you, girl.
yeah.
Like you do
Yeah.
you. But the feedback, so Mike actually came with me, and he wasn't completely committed to the process, so like very quickly sat up and started helping.
Yeah.
And he was like, this lady was not ready to deal with this. And one of the things that she disclosed at the beginning of this workshop was that it can bring up different things for you, and like you might, and it's interesting, I don't know how much of this was suggested in terms of the language used, but she's like, you might tingle, you might convulse, like these things might happen, but like stay calm, it's absolutely fine. So it's always interesting in these moments to kind of wonder how much of the meditative led practice was suggestive and how much you were actually naturally going to experience if it wasn't suggestive.
Yes.
But that aside, what came up for me was just how ill-equipped this woman really was to deal with a seizure.
Yeah.
But you're saying like you might effectively seize.
Yeah, so it's like,
You
listen,
need
we're
to
going
deal with
near
it.
the seizure zone, but if you do, you're fucked.
If you
like,
die, you die.
swim this close, but if you're done, you're on your own. Yeah.
And I think the message for me there was, if you are evoking convulsions, whatever you want to call that, or you're saying this is a safe space to share stuff, when that stuff comes up, best believe you need to be prepared to be able to actually hold space for it. And so many yoga teachers, unfortunately, like they've just done a 200-hour, like we didn't graduate from like some kind of shaman school.
Exactly. Yeah, man, I mean, that's the thing, is like, even if you think about, say, we've spoken about the benefits of yoga today, and I think they're like pretty fucking sensational, like feeling safer within your body. God, what a, like, finding more space within, like physically feeling more agile. That's enough. And then, so I think, like, I would say, really, I strongly believe that specialists should deal with problems. And like, I'm only equipped to help you in the same way that a friend would be like, oh, Anton has had some life experience, and I asked him some advice, and he, like, he could share what he's just learned from life experiences. But if you've got an issue, like, go to the fucking best that you can afford, go to specialists. Like, I think when, like, it's great, but it also has limitations, and that's fine, because, and if yoga were that fucking great, we've been practicing for a while. I would have reached some transcendent thing where I would be levitating, and I'm still a human being who goes through like struggles, has ups and downs, has to work on things. And I think that's how, like, I would trust someone who says they go through that process,
I think there's this risk with, when you are searching for something, when you are feeling wounded for whatever reason, you find, like you said, space and healing with a yoga teacher or with a yoga practice, there is this risk to hero worship or guru worship, whatever you want to call it, because it seems like this person that's leading the class has the shit together. But you're only seeing one aspect of that. And I'm always wary of that. And when I teach in this space, when I have people come to me and they ask me gnarly questions about their body, and they're like, oh, but this hurts, like, what should I do? And I'm like, fuck, I don't know, go to a physio. Yeah. I think what really, and I'm glad I had this experience early on in my yoga journey, with my same yoga teacher training teachers, they really did seem like they fucking had, open third eyes and were on this another level. And they were young, they were in their early 20s. So for me, it was like, wow, I wish I had all my shit together when I was that age. It was this beautiful, profound, 200-hour experience. And then at my graduation, at our graduation, all 30 of us, I found them snorting lines of coke in the bathroom. And I was like, okay.
Excellent,
fucking crashed down in terms of the pinnacle, the little pedestal that I'd put them on. And it's okay, like, sure, you can, coke is vegan.
The good stuff,
You can, like, if that's what you want to do, if you want to, you teach yoga on Monday to Friday and then Jordan do cocaine on the weekend, that's up to you. And I think that for me was just a big moment of, okay, we're all human. Because even I knew all of this going into it, but there is this moment of, like, putting this person on the pedestal, going, like, they've got their shit together. just because they can teach a beautifully flowing vinyasa doesn't mean that they have their shit together.
Yeah, man, shit. I mean, yeah, no, it's interesting, and I think sometimes as a yoga teacher, I wonder, like, you know, I always just want to be kind of transparent and show where I'm at. But you're like, oh, do I now? For me, it's like, do I now pretend like I don't get pissed off with things, or like, do I pretend to? You know, who really has their shit together? Like, you know, I think there's levels to it, but like, am I going to pretend that when the fucking electricity cuts and I'm, you know, have to wake up in the dark, do I go like, oh, you know, let me just not be attached to, like, let me not be attached to electricity. Like, shut the fuck up, bro. Like, or if someone cuts me off, and particularly if someone doesn't say thank you to me in traffic, I'm not yogic. You know, I'm fucking, there's some dark anger that bubbles up. Yeah, man. So, look, I think there are the fucking con men and con women and bullshitters, and I think, like, I'm reminded of when I was at university. There would be these in the first week of you know, all the students being there. There would be these like hectic churches that would set up stands to try like get people in, because they're vulnerable and they're almost impressionable and looking for like that kind of like being told. And I think, you know, some people, they don't want to be told that, like, look, these things are complex and you got to find your own way and you got to take what. Some people want to be like, do your fucking down dog, and, you know, you need to be stronger, and this is, if you're not doing it, it's because you're not, like, you know, your chakras are ill-aligned or something like that. And I can't, you know, I think that's sometimes a frustration that I'm like, I don't offer that kind of yoga, you know, and then, like, well, that's a different match, you know. But despite that, I must say that the majority of yoga teachers that I've met are like good people who are just trying to like make their way through life and share this practice, you know. But it's funny, I often joke, if I really wanted to make some money, I should just like become like a culty sort of dude and be like, come to my, like, imagine like trauma healing classes with some breath work where you hyperventilate. Shit, it just made me think. I once did a breathwork course through a program. I won't name them, but like, they're actually pretty fucking culty to me. And you just hyperventilate yourself, and then you think that you're having a spiritual experience.
100%.
And like, for me, I burst a blood vessel in my eye. Like, I was like, and like, you get so like that, like afterwards you can feel like you're talking to God, but you just fucking, I don't think it's just any, yeah, you almost did speak to God, but because you almost died. So, damn, man, like, some weird stuff. But you know, I think it really, the majority of people, and I'm stoked. You know, people always talk about, oh, the West has taken what yoga was, and fucking, yeah, but that's, of course, you know, and it seems like the yoga from the East, it's far less just about asanas. Like, most people here think of yoga as the poses, whereas that is, like, from what I understand, like, you would do the poses so that you could sit comfortably and meditate. That was the sort of the aim of the poses. And I do think that in recent years, there's been more people getting that wider understanding of yoga. And I think it's great that more people are coming into it. And I love seeing, you know, there's not that many guys that still do it. But more and more, I enjoy seeing, like, different people, you know, and I hope that if people are listening and they have a certain preconception of yoga, you know, like, as you said, there's different teachers for everybody, you know, and you can all find your fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think finding a teacher or a space that works for you is so important. Like you said, it shouldn't be something that's competitive. I think what I've really enjoyed in terms of teaching in my space is giving guys permission and women permission for that, is that it's your opportunity to just relax, to not compete, and to find a little bit of space to move and breathe, and then be able to move better afterwards. And for me, that's constantly what I come back to in times of injury, and then in between times of training, is just this little bit of work, even if it is just 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a full hour thing. This little bit of movement and breath work is going to set me up for the ability to move and breathe more down the line, which I think is so cool.
Oh, Jess, that was great, man. Really good to cover different aspects of yoga and within the yoga umbrella. And so, yeah, if this spoke to you, or if you think anybody would, you know, could have something from this, please feel free to share, like, and subscribe.